We live in an era of profound promise and peril. On one hand, great achievements, incredible innovations, unprecedented connectivity. On the other hand, fracture, confusion, and voices that whisper. It doesn't matter what you do, someone else will clean up the mess. But I tell you, it does matter what each of us does. The times call for individuals who will stand on principle, who will refuse to let the moment pass without making a difference. In Pastor Evan's warning to Donald Trump, we see above all a cry for leadership that honors truth, embraces humility, and holds fast to values that transcend politics. The message to him and to is, if you lead, lead well. If you influence, influence wisely. If you follow, follow faithfully. Because what happens when those in power stray? What happens when the voices of authority lose touch with the moral axis of right and wrong? The ground begins to shift beneath our feet, and what once seemed stable becomes uncertain. Picture for a moment a nation, its foundations cracking as the ideals that once were declared in confident tones begin to appear as hollow echoes. In that nation, a leader rises, charismatic, known, powerful. He promises change, rallies people, proclaims strength. But somewhere along the journey, the rallying cries become louder than the cultivating of character. The promise of service fades into the practice of self-advancement. The vision of unity gives way to division. That leader may have begun with noble intentions, but the path grew steep. The temptations many, the crowd's applause deafening. This scenario is not new. History repeats. Prophets have warned, kings have ignored, civilizations have paid the price. And yet, we act surprised when the warning signs appear. We shake our heads and say, who could have foreseen? But the truth, we could have foreseen. The corridors of power are no safe space from accountability. They simply reflect magnified versions of the inner life of the leader. A leader's character amplifies, his flaws become the public's expense. So the message to Donald Trump is essentially, assess your heart. Examine your motives. Return from pride. Remember the people. Serve the greater good. Be judged by your deeds. And to us, do the same. Because the danger is not only when a single leader stumbles, but when a society allows itself to be lulled into acceptance of mediocrity in leadership, when it forgets that greatness in leadership is anchored in integrity, in service, in humility. Friends, you may say, this is about political leadership. What does it have to do with me? Everything. Because leadership is not only about what happens in the Oval Office or the corridors of government. Leadership is expressed in every workplace, every home, every heart. If we lower the bar anywhere, we lower it everywhere. If we excuse compromise in public life, our private lives will not remain untouched. The warning is universal. Let's look closer at three themes derived from this message. 1. The imperative of integrity. Integrity is not optional. It is the bedrock of lasting influence. When leaders lose integrity, they may gain power, but they forfeit credibility. They may command attention, but they lose the ability to lead with authority. We might admire the facade, but the core fails, and the world sees it. In the warning, Evans urges that the leader remember the source of his power, remember the pleas of the people, remember the purpose of his office. A warning to Donald Trump is a warning to any of us who hold any position of influence. Do not separate your public face from your private life. Do not allow the applause of the crowd to drown out the whisper of your conscience. The cost of ignoring integrity is high. A reputation once lost is difficult to recover. A trust once broken requires greater than what mere words can repair. Let us then commit ourselves, whether we lead a nation, a family, a team, to walk in sincerity. Let our yes mean yes. Let our no mean no. Let our word be the bond, too. The power of repentance and renewal, the warning contains not just indictment. It holds hope. It points to the possibility of a turn, of a course correction, of a rededication. Just as a leader may be called out, so too may each one of us. Repentance isn't only for the worst offenders. It's for the wanderers, the distracted, the well-intentioned who drift. It's for the person who began with fire, but grew comfortable, who once spoke boldly, but now speaks safely. The message to Donald Trump is, return. Return to the people who placed trust. Return to the mission you once claimed. Return to the moral axis you once pledged to respect. And to us, return to your first love. Return to your purpose. Return to your dignity. The path to renewal requires humility. It means admitting you've fallen short. It means facing consequences. It means accepting discomfort. But it is the gateway to something greater, a leadership renewed, a character refined, a community healed. The warning is, unless you return, the accumulation of deviations will bring you to a place you didn't intend. But if you do return, even a mighty fall can become a platform for resurrection. 3. The call to courageous action. Warnings without action are whispers lost in the wind. The warning to Donald Trump is compelling, but unless it leads to action, it remains a caution, not a catalyst. And the same applies to you. You might feel convicted. You might feel stirred. But what follows matter. Will you change your pattern? Will you engage your calling? Will you step up into your responsibility? Courage is required, not merely in boardrooms or rallies, but in the quiet spaces, in difficult conversations, in standing for truth, when it's unpopular, in choosing integrity when compromise is easier. The warning asks, are you going to lead? Or are you going to be led by the shifting currents of opinion? Are you going to shape your world or be shaped by it? Look around you. There are many battles not being fought. Many crises not being faced, many voices being silenced, many people being overlooked. And in that vacuum, complacency thrives. But you were not made for complacency. You were made for purpose. You were made to shine in the darkness. You were made to speak when others are silent. You were made to act when others withdraw. Now, Let's tie these themes together and apply them deeply. Because while we've spoken of Donald Trump, the real subject of this warning is us. This is a moment of reckoning, a moment when we must choose. Will we be passive observers of history or active shapers of destiny? You have a sphere of influence. Your impact may seem small, but remember, a small lever moving the right fulcrum can shift something enormous. Do you serve your workplace with excellence? Do you treat your family with respect and love? Do you engage your community with service rather than complaint? Are you faithful in your character, even when nobody is watching? These actions matter. And if you are in a direct position of leadership, whether in business, government, church, or civic life, then the warning is magnified. Your integrity, your forgiveness, your courage matter even more. But they matter always, because what you model will ripple. Imagine a future looking back, where you stand before the people whose lives you touched, and you have nothing to show but consistency, character, courage. Could you? Will you? That future is shaped by what you do today. Now, it's time to speak honestly. You may have compromised. You may have rationalized. You may have allowed convenience to dictate choice. You may have followed the crowd. The warning doesn't leave you where you are. It invites you to something better. It challenges you to rise. Rise above fear of rejection. Rise above the temptation to shortcut integrity for gain. Rise above the notion that your past missteps define you. Because in the arena of leadership and life, what defines you is not your fall, it's your response. Will you stay fallen or will you stand? And if you stand, the world will notice. Not because you shouted the loudest, but because you lived the quiet truth. Not because you wielded the most power, but because you served the highest purpose. So I ask you, what will you choose? Will you heed the warning? Will you lead with integrity? Will you return with humility? Will you act with courage? This is your moment. Let's bring this to personal application. If you are in leadership, take the time to pause today. Assess your heart. Are you leading for your glory or for the good of others? Are you listening to the people you serve? Are you aligning with principles that outlast trends? If you've drifted, make the turn now. If you are not in formal leadership, but you influence your world in meaningful ways, family, friendships, workplace, then you are still a leader. Your integrity, your voice, your decisions matter. Live in such a way that when someone asks, "Who is this person?" the answer reflects honor, reliability, and purpose. If you feel that your influence is negligible, hear this. The smallest candle dispels the greatest darkness when lit in the right place. Your acts of kindness, your words of truth, your refusal to compromise, they build a legacy. They build momentum. They matter. Remember also the bigger story. We are part of something vast, a tapestry of human experience that spans generations. Our actions ripple beyond our time. The warning is not just for now, it is for posterity. the way we lead, the way we live, the values we pass on, they become the foundation for the next generation. Decide now to leave a foundation of character, not chaos. As we draw close, hear this clearly. This is not a moment for despair or cynicism. This is a moment for resolve, for hope, for renewal. The warning may point to danger, but its purpose is not to condemn, it is to awaken. It is to galvanize. It is to create a turning point. So stand up. Whisper a prayer of surrender if you must. Set your feet upon the rock of truth. Let your yes be yes. Let your no be no. Let the people who know you from the inside out say, "Hey," or "She kept going when it was hard. He or she chose right even when wrong was easier. He or she believed in something more than comfort." Because when leaders fail, the people suffer. But when people rise to lead themselves, their communities, their moments, then even the failure of one does not become the demise of many. Your choice matters. To the leader addressed in the original message, to the one in the highest halls of power, may you remember your origin, your responsibility, your impact. To you here today, may you remember your potential, your purpose, your power to influence. May you act. May you lead. May you hope. May you transform. Let this speech be a clarion call, not just to hear, but to act. Not just to listen, but to respond. May the warning you heard become the catalyst to your rise. May you walk forward into days of integrity, renewal, and courageous service. We live in a time when admiration for personalities often overshadows the pursuit of principles. Too many look to leaders as if they are saviors, forgetting that even the strongest voices are still human, capable of error, weakness. And so, Tony Evans' warning echoes far beyond one man. It pierces through the illusion that greatness lies in the person we follow rather than in the values we uphold. Personal accountability means this: you don't wait for someone else to do right before you decide to do right. You don't excuse your actions because that's what everyone is doing. You rise above the noise of the crowd and anchor your choices in conscience. It's easy to chant a slogan. It's harder to live by conviction. But true strength is measured not by how loudly we follow, but by how faithfully we stand when the crowd moves in the wrong direction. When Evans warns a leader like Donald Trump, the message is layered. He's saying, power may grant you influence, but only character will keep it. Yet at the same time, he's telling every listener, don't surrender your responsibility by placing it in the hands of another. Because when a nation starts believing that one man alone can define its destiny, it quietly hands over its moral compass. No single leader, no matter how strong or inspiring, should ever become the substitute for individual integrity. Each of us must answer to a higher authority, a moral standard that does not shift with popularity, applause, or political wins. It's easy to be moral when morality costs nothing. The test comes when integrity demands sacrifice, when honesty brings criticism, When truth isolates you instead of rewarding you. That's when your real character is revealed. So today, I urge you to reclaim that sacred ground of personal accountability. Ask yourself, what do I stand for when no one is watching? What values define my decisions when nobody applauds? Because that's where leadership begins. Not in titles, not in platforms, not in public recognition, but in private obedience to truth. When you take responsibility for your actions, you break the chain of dependency on flawed heroes. You stop expecting perfection from others and start pursuing excellence within yourself. That is the shift that transforms followers into leaders and societies into movements. We cannot afford to live as shadows of the powerful. We must become reflections of the principles that outlast power. The warning given to Donald Trump becomes a mirror. For all of us, don't lose yourself in pursuit of the crowd's favor. Don't trade truth for convenience. Don't confuse popularity with purpose. Your conscience is your compass. And if you silence it, you'll drift into the same chaos you criticize. But if you listen, if you let that quiet inner voice guide you, you'll find clarity even when the world is confused. That's personal accountability. That's the higher calling. That's the essence of moral leadership. This is where the real crisis begins, not in a moment of sudden collapse, but in the slow, quiet drift away from truth. A society rarely falls because of one catastrophic event. It falls because of 1,000 small concessions. Each time we say, it's not that bad, or everyone does it, or that's just how things are now, we move another inch away from the values that once anchored us. Complacency is the silent enemy of greatness. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It tells us that comfort is more important than conviction, that convenience is better than courage, and that, as long as we're not the ones directly affected, there's no reason to speak up. But that's how the light begins to fade, not with rebellion, but with relaxation. Tony Evans' warning to Donald Trump is not only about one man's behavior. It's a warning to every leader and every follower who has grown too comfortable with compromise. When leadership forgets its roots, when it trades the sacred for the successful, when it values applause more than accountability, something sacred begins to die, not just in the leader, but in the people who tolerate it. We start by overlooking small wrongs, and soon we cannot recognize right from wrong at all. We say, at least we're winning, as if winning without wisdom were still victory. We applaud results even when the methods that produced them stain the soul of our community. But friends, the cost of compromise is always higher than the price of courage. Foundational values are not decorations. They are the pillars that hold up civilization. Truth, justice, humility, faithfulness, compassion. These are not negotiable depending on who is in power. They are eternal. They are the moral gravity that keeps a nation grounded. And when leadership fails to honor them, the people must not follow blindly. Because to follow a leader who drifts is to share in the consequences of that drift. We must remember leadership is a mirror. When those at the top lose sight of principle, it reflects downward. The people begin to imitate what they see. The lines blur, standards lower, and soon, what was once unthinkable becomes normal. What was once shameful becomes acceptable. What was once sacred becomes optional. That's why complacency is so dangerous. It numbs the conscience before it destroys the structure. It makes us think we're still standing on solid ground, even as the foundation cracks beneath us. But here's the truth. You don't have to be in political office to lead, and you don't have to wait for a national revival to begin one. Revival begins when you refuse to drift. It begins when you decide to hold your line, to say, no, this is not who we are. This is not what we were built on. This is not the standard we accept. So, I challenge you. Refuse to be lulled into comfort when the world around you is collapsing morally. Refuse to let compromise disguise itself as wisdom. Refuse to call silence peace when it's really fear. Yes, leadership may fail you. Governments may disappoint you. Movements may fracture. But you can still stand firm on truth. You can still be the remnant that holds fast to what is right. You can still be the voice that says, even if no one else stands, I will. Remember, complacency is contagious, but so is conviction. One person with conviction can awaken hundreds who were sleeping. One spark of moral courage can ignite a movement of change. That's why Tony Evans' warning matters. It's not a message of despair. It's a call to awakening. It's a reminder that leadership without values leads to decay. But people of values can revive a nation even when leaders fail. So don't drift. Don't settle. Don't compromise. When leadership falters, let your light burn brighter. When truth is twisted, speak it straighter. When others forget their foundation, rebuild yours deeper. Because the destiny of a people is not sealed by the failure of its leaders. It's sealed by the silence of its followers. Even in the midst of warnings, there is hope. Even in the shadow of failure, there is redemption. That is the heart of Tony Evans' message. Not a declaration of doom, but an invitation to transformation. A warning is not meant to destroy. It's meant to awaken. It's a light flashing on the road to remind us that there's still time to turn, still time to choose a better direction, still time to rebuild what has been broken. You see, no person, no nation, no leader is ever beyond renewal. The story of humanity is filled with comebacks. Individuals who fell hard but rose higher. Communities that drifted but found their way home. The bridge from failure to renewal begins with a single-step confession. Confession is not weakness, it is wisdom. It's the moment you stop pretending, stop defending, and start acknowledging. It's when you say, yes, I've strayed. Yes, I was wrong. Yes, I need to change. There is power in that admission because confession breaks the chains of denial. It shatters the illusion of perfection and opens the door for restoration. For a leader like Donald Trump, the warning is clear: leadership without humility becomes tyranny. But humility is not humiliation. It's strength under surrender. It's the courage to bow before truth so that you can rise in authenticity. And the same applies to us. When we confess our shortcomings, we don't lose dignity. We gain it. Because the truth we acknowledge is the truth that sets us free. But confession is only the beginning. Renewal requires alignment. Alignment with truth, with principle, with the divine design that gives life meaning. We live in a world that celebrates self-made success, yet the greatest strength is not in being self-made, but in being truth-aligned. Truth is not flexible. It doesn't bend to convenience or politics. It stands firm, unchanging, eternal. And when we align with it, we find peace in chaos, direction in confusion, and power in purpose. Alignment with truth means asking the hard questions: am I living what I claim to believe? Do my actions match my words? Does my leadership reflect light or cast shadows? It means choosing, do what's right, even when it costs you, even when no one claps, even when it feels lonely. That's why renewal cannot be achieved through speeches, slogans, or policies alone. It requires transformation of the heart. It begins when truth takes root within us, when we stop performing and start transforming, when we stop defending our image and start building our integrity, when we stop looking outward for change and start looking inward. And then comes the third step, courageous action. Because confession without change is regret, and alignment without movement is stagnation. Once truth has taken root, it must bear fruit. And that fruit is action, courageous, consistent, compassionate action in your own sphere of influence. You don't have to be a president to change the world. You just have to lead in the space you occupy. Maybe your sphere is your family, your workplace, your neighborhood, or your circle of friends. Wherever you are planted, that's your mission field. You are the light there. You are the example. You are the living sermon. The question is not whether you have influence. The question is how you use it. Will your influence inspire integrity or ignite division? Will it bring healing or harm? The warning given to leaders like Donald Trump becomes a challenge to us. I'll lead well where you are. Because if you can lead yourself, you can lead others. And if you can lead others, you can help transform your community. Courageous action doesn't mean grand gestures. Sometimes it means quiet consistency. It's showing kindness when anger would be easier. It's speaking truth when silence would protect your comfort. It's forgiving when resentment feels justified. Every act of moral courage pushes back the darkness a little more. And when enough people take those small, faithful actions, the ripple becomes a wave. That's how renewal spreads. That's how movements are born. That's how nations heal. Not through the decrees of the powerful, but through the integrity of the people. So, if Tony Evans' warning to Donald Trump sounds sharp, it's because it carries urgency. But beneath that urgency lies hope. The hope that change is still possible, that hearts can still turn, that leadership can still be redeemed. It's a reminder that no matter how far we've drifted, we're never too far to return. The danger of moral decline is real, but so is the possibility of spiritual awakening. The same voice that warns also invites, come back, rise again, rebuild what was broken. And that invitation is open to every leader, every citizen, every heart willing to hear. Hope is not naïve, it's defiant. It stares at the ruins and says, this isn't the end. It sees failure and whispers, there's more in you yet. It takes the ashes of what was and begins to shape what can be. That's the power of renewal. It doesn't erase the past, but it redeems it. So wherever you are, whatever influence you hold, make the choice today, confess what's broken, align with what's true, and act with courage. Don't wait for permission to change the world. Begin where you stand. Begin with yourself. Because when one heart awakens, it inspires another. When one leader realigns, it sets a precedent. When one community refuses to compromise, it changes the culture. And when enough people live by truth, integrity, and love, then no warning, no failure, no darkness can overcome the light that rises from within them.